Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and in today's video I want to talk to you about hit points as health or hit points as stamina. This is an interesting topic because it kind of governs how we handle when a character takes a hit in combat and how we handle when monsters take a hit in combat. In the past, one of the main descriptions has been when your character loses hit points, they have taken physical damage. They have been stabbed, they have been slashed, they have been otherwise hurt. And that has required people to utilize the healing skill, and healing magic in order to get them back up and running again. Now, in a very magical world, this makes a lot of sense in a sense because the healing magic works instantly, and magic is magic, and so we don't have to explain how magic works, right? And in the old school, you healed 1 hit point per day of uninterrupted rest. And if your character only had 6 hit points, then that took, you'd be basically, you adventure, you rest for 6 days. By the 7th day, you're up and running again. And to a certain extent, this it made a certain amount of sense. It had verisimilitude. It wasn't a simulation. It didn't simulate grievous injuries and things like that. It wasn't trying to. It was trying to create a game mechanic. And the game mechanic's purpose was to give you a reason to either A, be careful, B, play a different character because your one character is currently resting, and that's especially important if you're doing a West Marches style campaign or dungeon crawl, or, C, just get more creative. But make sure you have a cleric also. Make sure you have a cleric or healer of some type in your adventuring group. And this has kind of been how things have gone ever since. But an interesting concept has been entering into our lexicon more and more in the past couple of years, at least in my experience. And maybe you have been playing with this for a long time before now, and even long before 5 years ago. And that's fine if that's the case. And in fact, I'm impressed. But let's talk about the idea of stamina. And to me, this kind of came up when I was thinking about video games. And I was thinking about the Diablo video games and how you've got healing potions all the time, and you've got magic potions, mana potions everywhere, and you've got stamina potions to refill your stamina bar, and all these different potions. And I kept thinking, well, what's the purpose of a stamina potion in D&D? Like, how can we simulate that? Well, then I started thinking about how we take damage in combat. And when you get hit, even when you're wearing armor, you get knocked back. Like, let's say you're wearing, a breastplate and a gambeson underneath it. All right, you're still hit by an arrow from a, 75-pound draw bow. Assuming the arrow doesn't pierce the breastplate, that's still going to hurt because that entire chunk of metal just got shoved back on you by this massive punch that hit you in a very precise place. And it's the same thing if you get hit with a mace. Now, just because your armor prevented you from taking grievous personal injury doesn't mean you're not getting knocked back and knocked around. And then I started saying, well, wait a minute, that's true. But, okay, so we could start describing that as, those are the things that happen when the attacker rolls over a 10 on their attack roll, but less than what your armor class is. So we describe that as, hey, they did hit your armor, but your armor did not buckle, and so you kind of got knocked back a bit. but you're still up and running, no hit point damage. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's a little cinematic. That's very Hollywood. And I thought, well, what's more Hollywood? And then there was, the whole like slashed on the cheek thing, and now that's bleeding, and suddenly you're like, oh, gritty Hollywood moment. I thought, well, wait a minute, how can we simulate this in our D&D games more? And then I was thinking, well, in a fight, none of the blows matter except the last one. And that kind of made me really say, aha, none of the blows really matter except for the last one. Everything else is sort of preparatory for that final blow, which is going to be either the killing blow or at least the combat ending blow. And that's where stamina kicks in. So if we assume that none of the other blows matter, then what are hit points? Because if we're not taking damage, then something, we're losing something, right? Well, we're losing stamina. We're losing the ability to continue, the ability to react quickly. We've taken a beating, and therefore our reactions are slower. Our ability to dodge is slower. That's kind of redundant, sorry. Our ability to swing our swords a bit slower. These are all represented by the loss of hit points, which is something that a lot of people are already doing. But if you change the word to stamina right away and just say, nope, that's stamina, then it makes more sense right away. You don't have to sit there and have the conversation of, well, actually, I don't use hit points as health. I use hit points as blah, 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 blah. You say, no, hit points we don't call hit points, we don't call them hit points in my game. They're stamina points. And everyone's like, oh, okay. And there's no comment. And so, but when you reach 0 stamina, you're exhausted, you're tired, you're done in, and the next blow, get straight past your defenses. Whoopsie daisy, and now you're down making death saves, trying to prevent yourself from dying or losing consciousness. Makes sense. Flows. It's cinematic, it's dramatic, and it works in a lot of story sense. Now, maybe it's not your cup of tea. That's okay. I'm not trying to tell you how you have to play. I'm just giving some ideas and some thoughts. But let's look at this a little more mechanic-based, though, because when we start looking at 5th edition D&D, because that's what a lot of people are playing, and so we're going to look at it, right? The rest mechanic. When you use resting with hit points as actual physical damage, it makes no sense. Because somehow I'm getting a lot of these hit points back just by sitting back and resting for a half an hour. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because that's not how it works. And it loses verisimilitude. It loses that. Yeah, we're not trying to simulate anything. This is a game. It's for fun. But we still want to have some verisimilitude in our games, especially if you're someone who kind of takes them a little seriously, right? But if we say that it's stamina, I lost my stamina, then sitting back and resting for 5 minutes and suddenly gaining back, 3d8 points of stamina makes more sense. And the spells giving you back your cure light wounds, giving back stamina right away, kind of makes more sense. And you can describe it as closing the little tiny wounds that you get along the way, that little bloody cut to the cheek that really does no actual damage but looks cool and is going to leave a scar. Yeah. You can describe that sort of thing. But treat it like it's healing stamina. And then also the long rest. Completing a long rest and regaining all of your hit points. With hit points as injury, that makes no sense. None at all. Because injury doesn't work that way. Even in a fabulous magical world where clerics can heal a broken arm by just putting their hand on it and saying a couple of prayers, the idea that a fighter who just got the snot kicked out of him and probably, stabbed and hacked and all these things, and suddenly the next morning he's going to wake up, bing, all good to go. No, that breaks verisimilitude all the way. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like 5th edition, it's one of the things that, as a lot of us old school gamers going, really? But if we say it's stamina, not hit points, you get a full night's rest. You've got all your stamina back. You're up and ready. You've had your cup of coffee. You're good to go. In fact, then you can even have fun with it. And like saying, you know what, those healing potions, they're not healing potions. They're coffee. And I am here for that. Coffee, energy drinks, a tea, good cup of tea. So suddenly healing potions themselves start making more sense. That's the healing potion isn't some weird magical concoction that is, knitting your wounds back together, unless you want it to be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But that healing potion is now a really good cup of Sumatra blend coffee. And you drink that and you are raring to go. And so everyone's got their healing coffees on their belts, their cold brew. And then the idea of potion sellers having healing potions and people being able to buy healing potions for just, so much of money, and them being everywhere and people being able to grab their hands on them. Again, that starts making more sense too, because that means that you're buying coffee and you're buying the good stuff. Okay, it makes sense. It works. It works with the mechanics. It can work with the world. It can work with your economy, because now we're talking healing potions as part of the economy and not this weird esoteric thing. And so then they start making more sense that they're available to an alchemist, because the alchemist is going to be the one like, if you're an alchemist, you're going to know how to make good coffee. I mean, come on. What kind of alchemist wouldn't figure out how to make a good cup of coffee so they could do late night research? Let's be honest here. So, yeah, hit points, call them stamina points instead. Change nothing else. And that's one of the things that, in my opinion, fixes one of my main issues with 5th edition, the verisimilitude of health versus damage and how that interacts with death saves and healing and rests. I'm a fan. Now, when it comes to old school games, you don't have to do that. I think that it's a bit more, up to DM's choice at that point. Well, it's always DM's choice, but it's a bit more, hit points make more sense as physical damage if you're maintaining the, 1 hit point healed for every 1 day of actual rest that you get. Although that can get a bit weird, because, your first level fighter who takes 6 points of damage and has 7 hit points, they rest for 6 days and then they're up and running again, versus your 4th level fighter that's got 14 hit points. They probably rolled pretty bad if they only had 14, but it can happen. And now they have to rest for 2 weeks to be back to full health. That's kind of a little weird. So in some cases, I would, if I'm considering bringing some of the new school rules into the old school when I run games again, but we're not there. That's a different topic. Anyway, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe, and might make some more of these. Let me know how you handle the hit points versus stamina thing. Let me know if I've done this video already, and you're just like, oh my gosh, John, how could you do this? How could you do 2 videos on the same topic? I'm sorry, I forgot. And I tend to just kind of roll with things. So hopefully I said something new in this video that I didn't say in an older one. Maybe if I find the old one, I'll replace it and delete it and be like, ha, sorry. Anyway, I'm kidding. I'm just joking around. It's late. I'm tired. I hope you all have a good one. Peace be with you.